going to do? No pickle, but we're using a plastic ball, and we'll talk about that in a second. First of all, my name is Mr. Connors.
And I'm Miss Tiona.
And we both are PE teachers. I work at Addison Meisner Elementary School,
And I teach at Boca Raton Elementary School.
We've known each other for over 35 years, and that's how long both of us have been teaching PE. Well, enough about us. What we need to do is we need to introduce the game pickleball. Do you know what happened with pickleball, where it came from?
No, I have no idea.
Okay, well, the origin of pickleball is quite simple. Years and years ago, all the way back to 1965, this is when the game was first thought of. There were 3 dads that got together one summer, and their kids were bored out of their minds. You know how that is.
Oh, I do.
So what they decided to do is they were going to come up with a game. All 3 of the fathers, they were very into tennis, but they realized something. Tennis is quite difficult and takes many years of practicing before you're good enough to play. So they decided, what if we modified the rules of tennis and came up with something that the children could do?
Love it.
And that's how pickleball was born. Now, do you know where the name pickleball came from?
No, I don't.
I know, it's kind of strange. Why is it called pickleball? Real simple. One of the families that developed the game had a dog, and his name was Pickle. And Pickle used to come along, and he would chase after the ball and take it, and they'd have to run around chasing after the dog time and time again. And then they decided, why not? Name it pickleball after their dog, Pickle.
I love it. That is so cute.
Yes, it is.
Adorbs.
Why don't you tell them a little bit about the rules that we need to adhere to these days?
The rules that we need to adhere to, 6 feet apart.
Definitely. So the entire time that we're working out here, we need to make sure that we are at least 6 feet apart. For pickleball, you're probably going to need even more room because your ball might get away from you.
What's another word for that when we're so far away from each other? What's the name for that?
That is called personal space.
That's right. Personal space, meaning that I can't touch him. He can't touch me. We're in our own space where we don't have to interfere with each other.
Right. So if we reach out, we should not be able to touch each other. The other thing we have to worry about personal space is if we have objects around us. So if we can touch an object like a pole or a fence, then we're too close to that.
Exactly.
And we have to make sure that we stay far enough away from each other. The other thing is, we're hoping that you're using the precautions that the CDC has outlined, and that is that everybody should be wearing a mask, and hopefully everybody's got gloves on. We're going to make sure that we're sanitizing all the equipment before and afterwards, so we'll take care of that end. We just ask that you respectfully do not touch anybody else's equipment. That's very important. You only play with your equipment, and if your ball, like we said, gets away from you, you're responsible for going to get your ball. I think that covers it.
I think so.
Okay, now let's talk to the counselors. Counselors, we need for you to have 1 paddle and 1 ball. Now the equipment I have, this is official equipment for a pickleball, and this is quite expensive. We most likely will have a plastic paddle and a plastic ball. So each child should have their own ball and their own paddle. And make sure that if they're going to put it down, they put it in their own space where they're going to go back to playing. So that way we don't mix up any of the equipment, and we're making sure that we're going to be absolutely safe. Okay, now let's talk about more safety. I know. We have to be careful with the safety. We've talked about personal space, but you have to understand the paddle that you have in your hand is not ever used to try and hit somebody with. That's unacceptable. If that were to happen, we would be calling your parents right away and you'd be sent home. So we make sure we always keep our paddle to ourselves. We basically have 3 rules that we always follow when we are teaching PE. First rule, of course, is to follow our directions. Do you have that rule at your school?
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely. So we need to follow directions. Second rule, keep our hands and feet to ourselves. At no time is it acceptable for you to ever put your hands on somebody else. If somebody does something that you don't like, then you make sure you tell your counselor, or you can tell, well, no, you can't tell us because we're on video, but you will tell your counselor. And then finally, the last part is respect. We need to respect everybody. That includes respecting our equipment. We don't just whack our ball as far as we can. That's never going to be part of our lesson. We are always staying on task and doing what's asked of us. Okay, are we ready to start getting into some paddle skills?
I think so.
Okay, why don't you demonstrate the first paddle skill we're going to work on?
All right, the first paddle skill we're going to work on today is upsies. All right, but before we get up to upsies, we probably need to learn how to hold this paddle correctly. All right, so it's kind of like a tennis racket. If you've ever had any tennis instruction, you're going to make an L with your dominant hand, run that L down the rim of the racket, shake hands with the racket. All right, now one thing I like to do, I like to bring my fingers up like this. So now I know that this is the side that I'm going to be hitting my forehand on. Forehand is on the side that I'm holding the racket with. All right, so once we know how to hold the racket, now we're ready to do our skills. So now let's spread your legs shoulder width apart. Bring that elbow back, nice and relaxed. All right, and now we're going to try upsies. Upsies, keep your eye on the ball. If you take your eye off the ball is going to go all over.
Now, Miss Tiona is all by herself in her own personal space. If there was somebody close by, can we start hitting the ball? Absolutely not. So I'm going to step out of the way while she demonstrates how to do upsies.
All right, so my eyes, watch my eyes, glued to the ball and my racket. Notice that I'm doing a low level hit. Low level meaning that it's not going any higher than my head. This way I can control it better. Notice how flat I'm keeping my paddle. If I dip the front of my paddle down, up, look what happens. It goes out forward. So we don't want to do that. So it's really important that we keep this paddle level so that we can keep it up in the air. Now, as we gain control and skill, then we can start popping it up a little higher. How high can we get it? All right?
Now, we don't want to hit it too high. So counselors, you need to monitor that. If you have a child that is whacking the ball way up in the air, that's not acceptable.
At all.
We only want the ball to go about to the top of their head.
Exactly.
Or lower. The other thing that we want to do, you notice the entire time Miss Tiona was hitting the ball, she kept her feet planted on the ground. So, to see if we really can control the ball, we do not want the children to move their feet. So you're going to find your own personal space, and you're going to probably have to be at least 10 feet away from each other. Once everybody's in that position, you can tell the children to begin. So we're going to be the children right now, and we're ready to start. Ready, begin. We keep our feet on the ground. We stay in one spot. You can see we have very good control. No time are you allowed to have a child running around chasing after the ball because somebody could run into somebody else. So make sure you stay in your own personal space. If the ball gets away from you and it rolls towards somebody else, you're going to wait till that person's finished bouncing the ball on the paddle, and then without getting close to each other, you're going to carefully go retrieve your ball. You're not allowed to start hitting here now. You're going to go back to your original spot, feet planted on the ground, and go ahead, start again. Just keep going. And that's the very first thing we're going to do. Now, counselors, you can pause this tape, or if you want to now go outside and practice these things, then you can show the entire video, and we will tell you what you need to look for.
And counselors, I had another idea. Another way to keep the kids in their own personal space is if you have hula hoops. Perhaps scattering the hula hoops out and making that hula hoop your child's spot. That way they know that this is where they come back. If they lose the ball, they have to come back to their hula hoop.
All right. Now, we're assuming that you've been outside and you've practiced for at least 5 or 10 minutes now, okay? You want to give them enough opportunities all by themselves. As you're walking around, you should be looking for several things. Now, common problems that we see as PE teachers when children try to hit the ball up in the air. Number one, they don't get off to a good start. So I'm going to show you the proper start. You hold your ball directly over top of the paddle. All you're going to do is let go of the ball and then hit the ball up in the air.
But Mr. Connors, what if my paddle's like this?
Well, if you are angling your paddle, let's demonstrate. I drop the ball, the ball bounces away from the paddle. So we want to make sure that the paddle's going straight up and down. I like to say a level paddle. What do I mean by that? If I put a ball on my paddle, it should be able to stay there. It should not move at all. If my ball starts rolling, then the paddle's not level. So we've got to make sure the paddle's level. Once it's level, now we can start. So drop the ball onto the paddle. Other things we've seen, some kids put the ball on the paddle, throw it up in the air. That's a lot harder. Another thing they do is they like to throw the ball up in the air and then try and hit it on the paddle. Once again, too hard. Drop the ball straight onto the paddle and hit it straight up and down.
Again, it's all about keeping that level, the paddle level. If it's not, just remember that the ball's going to go wherever this is pointed. That's where the ball's going to go. So if I'm here, the ball's going to go flying over there. If I do this, the ball's going to go flying behind me. So you've got to be aware of where this paddle is. And again, I like to do that V. I like to do this V because it helps support my wrist and keep my wrist from breaking. All right, breaking means bending like this. This is a no-no. Try to keep it nice and tight, just like this. Again, keeping it level, because if it's not level, and notice my eyes, I'm tracking the ball. Just like when we track our words when we're reading, we're doing the same thing. We're using our eyes to track the ball.
All right, so now we've talked about the proper way to get started. Another thing Miss Tiona's already showed you, and the thing that she didn't talk about though was when she puts her 2 fingers behind the paddle, she's making the handle shorter. So a shorter handle is a lot easier to control the ball than a long handle. And that's the problem with tennis. A tennis handle I would be holding way down here. And that makes it much more difficult to control the ball. So make that a short handle, and that way you'll have better control of the ball. So now we've got a challenge for you. When you go back out, you are now going to let the children go for another 5 or 10 minutes. And what they're going to do is they're going to count how many times they can keep the ball up in the air. If the ball hits the ground or they move their feet, they have to start at 0. Let me demonstrate. So here I go. 1, 2, 3. The ball hit the ground. My record is now 3. So I'm going to try and beat 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I took a step. So I would have had 7, but I took a step. So my score was really only 6. Now we don't add together. It's not like 1, 2, 3. It hit the ground. 4, 5, 6. And children, you've got to be honest. Do not tell us at the end, oh, I had 1,000. You've only been practicing for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not possible. We want you to keep a real number because when you go back out to practice again, each time you want to try and beat your record. Till finally, you can keep that ball going 20 times or more. If you're hitting the ball up and down on your paddle 20 times or more, you're showing us you have excellent control.
And that's what this is all about right now, getting control, learning how to manipulate the paddle.
Now we're going to do one more activity, and that is called downsies. So we've done upsies,
Upsies.
where we're hitting the ball up. Now we're going to hit the ball down. It's almost like dribbling a basketball. We want to hit the ball hard enough on the ground so it bounces up. Now we're going to see how smart you are. We want you to raise your hand. If you think that hitting it up is easier, then you're going to raise your hand right now. If you think it's harder, it's going to be easier to hit the ball down, now you children raise your hand. Now when we go out and we practice, counselors check to see who's right. And we'll do a poll at the end. Now, to do downsies, what I'm going to do is start the ball up high. I'm going to drop the ball so it's going to bounce up. Now, just like a basketball, if you don't push the ball down hard enough, it's not going to come back up to your hand. So you're going to have to hit the ball down so that it'll come back up high enough so you can hit it. So once again, in your own personal space, hopefully you're on a hard surface. We should not be doing this in the grass. So if you're on a hard court or you're in a gym, then you start the ball up high, drop, and hit down. Aim the face of the paddle straight down at the ground. And stop, Miss Tiona. Now you can see we both were pretty good at that. We kept it going for a long time. If your ball goes away from you, remember, wait till the person's done hitting. Make sure that you're not close to them, and carefully go get your ball, go back into your own space. Notice, we did not move our feet, so the same rules. If my ball gets away from me, I'm going to go pick up my ball. I'm going to go back to my empty space. I'm going to start again, hitting the ball straight up and down. And if the ball gets away again, I'm going to go get it and bring it back to my spot every single time. Do not move your feet. Now, counselors, you're going to let them practice for a while. And after they practice for a while, you're going to bring them back in. And what you're going to tell them is some common mistakes. If you aim the face of the paddle away from you or to the sides or behind you, the ball will go away. Watch. So now I'm hitting it straight up and down. I angled the paddle away from me, so the ball bounces away from me. I've got to make sure I'm aiming the paddle straight up and down at the ground every single time.
Keeping the paddle what?
Level.
Level.
Level. And the other thing we want to make sure, use a short handle. Again, shorter handles makes it easier. As you get better, then you can move your hand further down the paddle handle, but we don't have to worry about that right now. Now, when we go back out the second time, you are going to allow them for another 5 or 10 minutes to make sure that they are hitting the ball straight up and down and staying in their own spot. They're going to count how many times they can do it. Watch me. Here I go. 1, 2, 3. It got away from me. I go back to my spot, so now I got to be 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that was much better. Oh, look at Miss Tiona. She hit it about 10 times.
10 times, because I missed on 11.
But that's okay. And that's all there is to it. So now, to recap everything, we've learned 2 basic skills right now. We've learned upsies, to hit the ball up, and we learned downsies, hitting the ball down. Both activities require you to do the same thing. Aim the face of the paddle where you want the ball to go. What else do you have, Miss Tiona?
Is it okay to switch hands?
You could switch hands, because I know some of you are probably saying right now, oh, my arm's tired. Yeah, it's tiring, which brings us to one really good point, is any time that you're out there practicing, counselors make sure you're giving the children water breaks. We have our water bottles right here, and we drink water all the time. And it's really important that the kids stay hydrated and that they are making sure that they're not overheated. Now, during the summertime, it gets really hot out there, so take breaks. There's nothing wrong with taking breaks. And if you forget some of the things we taught you on the video, simply rewind the video and start again.
So I had another question.
Yes.
Pickleball is played indoors?
No, it's
In
not.
my house?
Now, normally what will happen is, if we were at the site, we would bring our own pickleball nets. They are about the height of a tennis net. And eventually, the game looks a lot like tennis, where you're hitting the ball back and forth over the net. We're just doing the beginning skills, and next time we get together, we're going to introduce a net, and we're going to show you what a pickleball court looks like. But for right now, we're just concerned on those paddle skills. Before you can start hitting it back and forth with another person, you need to be able to control the ball. I think that's it for today, Miss Tiona.
Okay,
It
sweet.
was great working with
It
you.
was.
And kids, we'll see you next time that we get together, and we will introduce more pickleball skills for you until finally you're ready to play a game of pickleball.
Woohoo! All right.
Have fun, kids.
Have
and
fun practicing.
be safe.